मीडिया वेव्स टीवी तो खबरां दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम दे विच आप सब दा स्वागत है।
Khabran Da Lekha Jokha, September 11, 2024 has been sponsored by Hanif Litigation. Any criminal or regulatory law matters, contact lawyer Shahid Hanif at Hanif Litigation, 604-626-3144. Despite drop, Vancouver is still most expensive place to rent in Canada. Rental rates are down for the ninth straight month in Vancouver compared to a year ago, but that trend may be changing. According to a national report from rentals.ca, the average apartment rates for Vancouver reached just over $3,100 for August. When looking month-to-month, rates have been creeping up steadily since spring. With Vancouver still the most expensive city in Canada for rentals, it's no surprise there's a lot of pressure on shared accommodation. Giacomo Ladders with rentals.ca breaks down the numbers for BC. The highest rent for shared accommodation is $1,211 a month. So even if you have a roommate in British Columbia, you're paying about $1,200 a month. In Vancouver, almost $1,500 a month for a roommate, he explained. And while it's still a lot of money, Ladders explained it's about half of what you'd pay if you were to rent on your own. You're not doubling the rent, but in theory, you can make your rent half because you can share it, he said. While Vancouver remains the most expensive place in the country to rent, the rental agency says markets across BC are catching up. These secondary markets, we might be seeing a point in time where even these are now becoming too expensive as they are matching their Vancouver and Toronto counterparts, he explained. According to rentals.ca, Burnaby is the second most expensive place in the country to rent. Surrey came in at number 5 and Kelowna rounded out the top 10.
Comparison ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ क्लीयर है जी अजे भी वैनकूवर दे विच अपार्टमेंट जे तुसीं रेंट करनी है एक बेडरूम दी तां $3100 है जिहड़ा तुहानूं पै रहे ने और याद रहे मुल्क दे विच सब तो ज़्यादा महंगा शहर है वैनकूवर दे विच अगर तुसीं किराए ते रहना है भावें कि उम्मीद की जाती सी कि किरायां दे विच कमी आएगी पर पिछली बसंत रुत तो बाद थोड़ा थोड़ा करते जिहड़ी गिनती मिलती है वो वाधे वल नूं रही है और इस करके ही शेयर्ड अकोमोडेशन है जी भाव किसी नाल अपार्टमेंट जां रहायशी थां जी शेयर करने वाली जोड़ा रुझान है वो वध रहा है उस भी तकरीबन एक व्यक्ति को अगर वो शेयर्ड अकोमोडेशन के रहिंदा तो उसनूं $1,200 प्रति महीना जोड़ा वो पैंदा और इस करके वैनकूवर अजे भी चोटी ते है दूसरे नंबर पर बर्नबी आउंदा है सरी आउंदा 5वें नंबर ते उस तो उपरंत वडेरी नंबर के उत्ते आउंदा जी कलोना.
Food banks in BC expected to shatter records this year. There's a grim outlook for food banks across BC. We're looking at record-breaking client numbers in 2024, Dan Huang Taylor, Executive Director of Food Banks BC, said. He says earlier this year, the organization eclipsed 100,000 unique visitors to agencies in a single month, the first time that occurred since food banks began operating in BC more than 40 years ago. Wang Taylor says the increase in monthly visits from 2019 to 2024 has jumped 81%. He explains there are 3 main reasons why people are reaching out for help: the cost of food, low wages, and the cost of housing. It's also impacting those sectors, but we are seeing many different reasons contributing towards what is really a crisis. Huang Taylor says things are going from bad to worse in BC, and he's pushing all levels of government to help bring wages up across the board, not just for those earning minimum wage, and to create accessible, affordable housing. There's a significant disparity between the minimum wage and the living wage in BC. I think it's around $8 if you're living in the lower mainland. For every hour you're working, you're $8 short of being able to cover life's essentials. That requires some significant policy changes. A growing and concerning trend is the number of professionals working full-time whose salaries don't cover the cost of groceries. The working poor scenario, that's a trend that we've been seeing across the country and certainly here in BC. It's been one of the largest client groups of growth that we've seen in the last couple of years, he explained. People's wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. Housing is becoming more unaffordable. The increasing cost of food at the grocery store and just general inflation are creating a lot of very difficult times for British Columbians. Immigrants and refugee clients coming to food banks has been another very noticeable shift in the client groups. We're seeing a lot of post-secondary students coming to food banks, and that's been a trend over the last couple of years as well. Huang Taylor adds that in addition to seeing a spike in demand, donations to food banks are down. It's a perfect storm, but they are a resilient group and they will find ways to ensure the people who come to them for services are getting support. That might mean they are leaning more into their cash reserves or finding more innovative ways to access food and work with new donor partners to source fresh produce. However, Huang Taylor warns that skyrocketing usage levels won't be sustainable model for much longer. 43 years ago, when the first food banks opened in BC, they were serving a couple of hundred people, and here we are, the numbers have never been greater. It's a pretty bleak picture if I'm being honest. He says discussions are underway with the government and various stakeholders to help ease the pressure. Huang Taylor says there may be a breaking point, but he's not sure when and what the consequences will be.
BC विखे फूड बैंक्स ने अपनी हालात है ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਤਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਹੈ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 80% ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਵਧੀ ਹੈ, ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਡੋਨੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਘਟੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ 40 ਵਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਮੇਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਫੂਡ ਬੈਂਕ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਕੁਝ ਸੈਂਕੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਮਦਦ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਮਹੀਨੇ 'ਚ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਲੱਖਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਡੇਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਹੈ, ਗਿਣਤੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ 2-3 ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੈਟਾਗਰੀਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸੀਆਂ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੈਫਿਊਜੀ ਜਾਂ ਨਵੇਂ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੈਂਟਸ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣਾ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਰਗ ਹੈ, ਪੋਸਟ ਸੈਕੰਡਰੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਰਗ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਰਹਿਣ ਦੇ ਕਿਰਾਏ ਇਤਨੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨੇ, ਬਾਕੀ ਖਰਚੇ ਇਤਨੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਖਾਣੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇੰਨੀਆਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਹਿੰਗੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਚੋਇਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਫੂਡ ਬੈਂਕਸ ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਰ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੁਝ ਕੰਮ ਨਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਦੇਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸਮਰਥ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ।
Surrey addresses truck parking space shortage, adds new parking sites. In response to the persistent shortage of truck parking spaces in Surrey, the council is moving forward with plans of 2 new sites. During a city council meeting on Monday, 2 temporary use permits for truck parking sites got approved on city-owned land. One site in Annandale Tynehead area is said to have 41 parking spots and another one in Bridgeview with 36 parking spots. Mayor Khabran Da Lekha was in favor of the plan and says the city is committed to ensuring that our truck drivers have the facility they need to operate safely and efficiently. It is vital we address this issue because I have often said trucking is our economy on wheels. This is just the beginning and we look forward to initiating plans at additional sites in the near future, she said according to a press release yesterday. In total, the city of Surrey plans to introduce 4 truck parking sites with 150 truck parking spots. After proceeding with public notification for the TUPs, the council will vote on the permit approvals at a later meeting. The city says the council will vote on the permit approvals at a later meeting.
ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਨੇ 2 ਸਾਈਟਸ ਬ੍ਰਿਜਵਿਊ ਤੇ ਟਾਈਨਹੈਡ ਦੇ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਪਰੂਵ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਪਾਰਕਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੰਮੇਰੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਦੇ ਸੁਲਝਾਅ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 5 ਟਰੱਕ ਪਾਰਕਿੰਗ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਹਿਮਤੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ, ਪਰ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਇਹ 2 ਪਾਰਕਿੰਗਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿਟੀ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਨਤਾ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
Mission road rage victims recovering at home, police still investigating. 2 victims who were left with significant injuries after an extreme case of road rage on Sunday have been released from the hospital and are recovering at home. 20-year-old Carson Asher and his girlfriend, 21-year-old Sam Parkhill, were allegedly assaulted with a baseball bat at the intersection of Bakerview Avenue and Cedar Street after they reportedly been followed by another driver after honking in a Tim Hortons drive-through. In an email Tuesday, Mounties say they have received numerous tips about people seeing the suspect in various BC communities, but they have not yet been located by police. Asher says he did not expect a simple civil honk would lead to him and his girlfriend being attacked. I'm frustrated. It's almost scary for us to go outside now, he said. The couple, they don't feel safe in their hometown, they said. Asher says the suspect hit him pretty good in the jaw and he has some swelling, making it hard for him to chew his food. He says he has 7 stitches total, 4 in his hand and 3 in his wrist, both almost 3 inches long, caused by the cuts from the back of his car being hit. Parkhill says she sustained 2 hematomas from baseball swings along her back. She says doctors have told her she must still get neck and spinal checkups. I do have a pretty severe concussion, 2 black eyes, severe one, she said. She says doctors have said it's pretty much healing from now on, but she'll be attending counseling to help with the mental trauma of being attacked. Parkhill says she's very grateful to have gotten out of the assault. The Mission RCMP says they are continuing their efforts to locate the suspects. They say the suspects are known to travel throughout BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. If anyone in the public happens to see either suspect, the RCMP is asking you to call 911. They ask you not to approach or follow them. You can call them at 604-826-7161 and code file number 2024-10852.
ਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਵਿਖੇ ਟਿਮ ਹੋਟਨ ਦੀ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਥਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿਰਫ ਔਰ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਹਲਕਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਹਾਰਨ ਮਾਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਹੋਏ ਝਗੜੇ ਦੇ ਪੀੜਤ ਜਿਹੜੇ 21 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੇ 22 ਸਾਲਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਨੇ, ਔਰਤ ਤੇ ਮਰਦ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਛੁੱਟੀ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਹੀਲਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਪਲੀਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਹੱਡਬੀਤੀ ਵੀ ਦੱਸੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਕਸਰ ਆਦਤ ਹੈ ਅਲਬਰਟਾ, ਮੈਨੀਟੋਬਾ ਤੇ BC ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਟਿਪਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ RCMP ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਪਹੁੰਚੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਹਜੇ ਪੁਖਤਾ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਕੜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਨਾਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਨੇ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ RCMP ਦਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪੀੜਤ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਵਿਅਕਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਦੱਸੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਸਰੀਰਕ ਤੇ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਤਕਲੀਫਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਲੰਘ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ, ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ RCMP ਨੇ ਆਦੇਸ਼ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਦੋਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਗੱਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਨਾ ਕਰੋ, ਬਲਕਿ 911 ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਔਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰੋ।
Candidates spar on economy and abortion as Harris takes on Trump in a way Biden could not. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris faced each other on the debate stage Tuesday night for the first and possibly the last time. Harris, the Democratic vice president who is a former courtroom prosecutor, was eager to prosecute Trump's glaring liabilities, but she also was tasked with reintroducing herself to voters who are still getting to know her as the party's presidential nominee. Trump, a Republican now in his 3rd presidential election, was set on painting Harris as an out-of-touch liberal. He also tried to win over skeptical suburban voters, many of them women, turned off by Trump's brash leadership style and his penchant for personal insults. The 90-minute debate played out inside Philadelphia's National Constitutional Center in accordance with rules negotiated by both campaigns. There was no live audience and the candidates' microphones were muted when it was not their turn to speak. Some takeaways on a historic night. From the opening handshake, Harris took the fight to Trump in a way that Biden could not. The vice president walked across the stage and introduced herself, Kamala Harris, before reaching out and grabbing Trump's hand in the opening moments. In her first answer, Harris said Trump's trade tariffs would effectively create a sales tax on the middle class. She soon accused Trump of presiding over the worst attack on American democracy since the Civil War, the Capitol riot on January 6th of 2021, and she charged the former president with telling women what they could do with their bodies. But Harris may have got under Trump's skin the most when she went after his performance at his rallies, noting that many people often leave early. Trump was largely calm when he defended himself against each charge, but he showed annoyance with her comment about his rallies. He insisted his events were larger than hers, and he seemed to grow angrier at times as the debate continued. Harris frequently shifted her message from Trump back to American people. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your needs and your desires, Harris said of Trump's rallies, and I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and Ellie skimmish on the economy. The debate opened with an unexpectedly wonky exchange on the economy. Harris took on Trump for his plan to put in place sweeping tariffs and for the trade deficit he ran as president. Trump slammed Harris for inflation, and he incorrectly said was the worst in the country's history. The exchange ended up with some of Trump's traditional bombast. He said Harris was a Marxist, even though she had just cited positive reviews of her economic plans from Wall Street Investment Bank, Goldman Sachs, and the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, but it was particularly notable for Harris' effort to turn the tables on Trump. Trump noted that people look back on his presidency's economy fondly. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country, he said. Harris flatly told viewers Donald Trump has no plan for you. Americans are slightly more likely to trust Trump over Harris when it comes to handling the economy, according to an Associated Press and RC Center for Public Affairs poll from August. Both candidates dig in on abortion. Harris came out swinging in defense for abortion rights, perhaps the strongest issue for Democrats since Trump's nominees created a Supreme Court majority to overturn the constitutional right to an abortion. Her sharp arguments provided a vivid contrast on President Joe Biden's rambling comments on the issue during his June debate with Trump. The government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body, Harris said. She painted a vivid picture of a woman facing medical complications, gut-wrenching decisions, and having trouble out of state for an abortion. Trump was just as fierce in defense, saying he returned the issue to the states, an outcome he said many Americans wanted. He struggled with accuracy, however, repeating the false claim that Democrats support abortion even after babies are born. He stuck to that even after he was corrected by moderator Lindsey Davis. I did a great service in doing that. It took courage to do it, Trump said of the overturning of Roe v. Wade and its constitutional protectors for abortion. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it, and I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices. Polls have shown significant opposition to overturning Roe, and voters have punished Republicans in recent elections for it. Trump refused to say whether he would veto a bill banning abortion nationwide, saying such legislation would never clear Congress and reach the president. He also broke with his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, suggesting Vance spoke out of turn when he said Trump would veto a national abortion ban. I didn't discuss it with J.D., Trump said. Who's talking now? Trump objected when Harris interrupted him, an interjection that he could hear but viewers could not because her microphone was muted according to the rules of the debate. Wait a minute, I'm talking now, Trump said. He was putting his pen on a line she used famously against Mike Pence in the 2020 vice presidential debate. Sound familiar, Trump added. 4 years ago, Harris rebuked Pence for interrupting, saying, Mr. Vice President, I am speaking.
ਗਵਾਂਢੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰਪਤੀ ਦੀ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੱਲ ਬੜੀ ਦਿਲਚਸਪ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ 2 ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਆਉਣ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰਪਤੀ ਦੀ ਚੋਣ ਲੜ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕੈਮਲਾ ਹੈਰਿਸ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਹੋਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਸੀ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਾਈਕ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਰਾਬਾਜੀ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਪਰ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਬੜੇ ਰਹੇ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਧਿਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਨੇ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਗੈਰ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਦਾਰ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੋਣ ਦਾ ਦਾਅਵਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਕੈਮਲਾ ਹੈਰਿਸ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੱਖ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਬੋਰਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੜਾ ਸੈਂਸਿਟਿਵ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਔਰ ਕਾफ़ी ज़्यादा ਦਿਲਚਸਪ ਇਹ ਵਾਰਤਾਲਾਪ ਰਹੀ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਵਾਰੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਹਾਸੋ ਹਿਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾਤਾਵਰਨ ਵੀ ਸਿਰਜਿਆ ਗਿਆ।
BC businesses see concrete economic vision from parties ahead of the election. Leaders from a wide array of businesses in British Columbia are urging the province's political parties to deliver a clear and actionable plan for revitalizing an economy that they say has pushed many residents into a personal recession. Groups representing the forestry and mining industries, independent businesses and contractors say they have sent a survey of 10 questions to leaders of political parties ahead of the fall election, asking for a clear response on their economic visions for BC and concrete steps to get there. Business Council of British Columbia President Laura Jones says her group is seeing more residents expressing a loss of hope in their prospect of building good life in the province due to economic concerns, even if BC isn't technically in a recession. Other business leaders say they want the next BC government to answer concerns about the high cost of doing business, government budget deficits, bureaucracy in delaying permitting of projects, public safety and acute labour shortages. The call for action comes the same day Provincial Finance Minister Catherine Conroy is unveiling BC's first quarterly report, and Greater Vancouver Board of Trade President Bridget Anderson says businesses remain in the dark about the economic platforms of the major parties. Anderson says a recent parliamentary budget report painted a dire picture of BC's finances that requires billions of dollars that need to be cut or increased in taxes for stability, and businesses are asking those who could form the next government to show us a vision. I think there's a lot of voters who are undecided right now within the business community and public at large, Anderson says, and I think this is an opportunity for all of the parties to look at their platforms and to appeal to the voters. This is a unique opportunity, and elections matter. Campaigns matter, and their campaign will matter more than anything. In late August, the province said BC ended the fiscal year with a deficit of around $5 billion due to items such as wildfire expenses and essential spending on priority services. That comes as the GVBOT says its members have incurred an additional $6.5 billion in government-imposed cost in the last 2 years, which Anderson says unsustainable for small businesses. The regulatory system is challenging when it comes to licensing and permitting. So businesses in British Columbia are facing many challenges right now, and the cost of doing business is simply too high, she said. Anderson says members of the board came up with 10 questions for political parties ahead of the election, hoping they are answered publicly. She says the questions focus on the economy, business growth, innovation and investment, but also other items like what is the energy policy for all the parties and how will they address some of the very serious issues we are seeing around public safety and crime. And Anderson says the NDP government has made some positive adjustments to the regulation thresholds to allow for breaks for small businesses, but many of the over 5,000 members of the GVBOT have answered surveys saying it's still too expensive to do business in the region. It is property taxes, it is a cost of labor, it is inflation, it is licensing and permitting. It is so many layers of different costs that businesses are dealing with right now that simply make their jurisdiction really unaffordable. The fiscal update in August is also sad. Natural resources revenues are down while vehicle insurance revenues from ICBC rose. Earlier this month, Canfor Corporation announced it is shuttering 2 northern BC sawmills, inciting a recently imposed US tariff as a key factor on top of ongoing financial losses, a weak lumber market and difficulty accessing economically viable timber in the province.
ਅਗਾਊਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਗ੍ਰੇਟਰ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਦੀ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਸੰਸਥਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਸੂਬਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਰਵਾਜ਼ੇ ਖੜਕਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ, ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਜੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਦੀ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਮੈਨ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਣ। ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਮੂਹਰੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ 10 ਸਵਾਲ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਲਿਖ ਕੇ ਭੇਜੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤਰ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਵਪਾਰੀ ਵਰਗ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰਟੀ ਟੈਕਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਕਿਰਾਇਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਔਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਰੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਖਰਚੇ ਨੇ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਧ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਪਾਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਮਾਰ ਹੇਠਾਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਜਾਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਸੂਬਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਲਲਾਪਤ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੂਬੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਪਾਰੀ ਵਰਗ ਦੇ ਮੱਦੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਹੁਲਾਰਾ ਦੇਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਲਾਨ ਕੀ ਹੈ।
Poliver says he will try to trigger federal election as soon as possible. Days before the House of Commons returns for the poll session, Conservative leader Pierre Poliver says he will try to trigger a federal election as soon as possible. Speaking on Parliament Hill on Wednesday, Poliver confirmed what he has hinted at before, that he wants to send Canadians to the polls and will move a motion at the earliest possible time to take down the government. The common sense Conservatives will put forward a non-confidence motion at the earliest possible opportunity, he said. Poliver also challenged the NDP to vote with the Conservatives after tearing up their supply and confidence deal with the governing Liberals and to commit to do so before Monday's by-elections. Will you vote to keep your friend Justin Trudeau in the costly coalition in power, or will you allow Canadians to choose in a carbon tax election? That is the decision, the Conservative leader said. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's top advisor said they are not particularly eager to launch an election. Singh has previously stated the NDP will decide on a case-by-case basis whether or not to support the government. Poliver also called on the Bloc Quebecers MPs to join the Conservatives in bringing down the government. The party has already indicated that it's written up a list of demands for the Liberals in exchange for support on votes. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, speaking at his caucus meeting in Nanaimo, BC, said he can't wait to take on the Conservatives this fall and contrast their position with his plan to invest in Canadians. The answer the Conservatives are bringing forward is, oh no, will create growth and opportunities through cutting programs Canadians are relying on, Trudeau said. On Monday, voters will be going to the polls in Montreal's La Salle Imad Verdun riding and in the Winnipeg riding of Elmwood Transcona. The next federal election must take place by October 2025 at the latest.
ਫੈਡਰਲ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਪੋਲੀਵਰ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਛੇਤੀ ਤੋਂ ਛੇਤੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਡੇਗਣਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਕਰਾ ਕੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ ਬਣਾਈ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੁਖਾਤਬ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਹਿਮਤੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਖਤਮ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਨੂੰ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਵੋਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਸੁੱਟੋ। ਉਧਰ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਦੇ ਬਰਾਬਰ ਦੀ ਮੇਜ਼ ਖਾਂਦੀ ਹੋਈ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਲਿਆਵਾਂਗਾ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤਿਆਰੀ ਹੈ। ਖੈਰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਨੇ ਅਕਤੂਬਰ 2025 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਤ ਹਨ।
Canadians find tip requests inappropriate for retail purchases, takeout food orders, says Paul. We're all been there. You make a purchase at a store or pop into a restaurant to grab our takeout orders and you're suddenly presented with a device asking how much you'd like to tip. Tipping has long been an acceptable part of the service industry, but according to a new poll, Canadians don't think requests for gratuities are acceptable in situations where very little has been done to earn the extra cash. The poll released on Tuesday by Narrative Research makes it clear that Canadians still take a fairly traditional approach to tipping, finding it a no-brainer at places like sit-down restaurants and salons, but an intrusive and annoying request at places like retail stores where just 7% find it an appropriate request. Also, high on the list of spots where Canadians don't find tipping requests acceptable are takeout restaurants 19% approval, grocery pickup 20%, and fast food restaurants 21%. Canadians are also fairly cool with tipping for hotel housekeeping 49% and taxis 48%. For rideshare apps, however, just 39% approve of tipping. Well, it comes to how much extra Canadians are willing to dole out, location once again plays a key role. The poll found that 1 in 4 Canadians, 24%, are willing to tip 18% or more at a restaurant compared to 1 in 5, 19% willing to tip that much at a salon or barber. A 15% tip is more common at restaurants than a salon barber, 53% versus 45%. The poll found salon and barbershop staff are more likely to receive lower tips, with 23% of Canadians saying they would tip 5% or not tip at all, 13% compared to a restaurant where 17% would tip 5% and 6% would not tip at all.
ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਜਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਾਨੇ ਦੀ ਸੂਰਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੋਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟਿਪਸ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚਰਚੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਨਾਲ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਰੈਸਟੋਰੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸੈਲੂਨ ਵਗੈਰਾ 'ਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਉੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟਿਪ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਕੁਛ ਮਤਲਬ ਦੱਸਦੀ ਹੈ ਪਰ ਟੇਕ ਆਊਟ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਡਰਾਈਵ ਥਰੂ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਗਰੋਸਰੀ ਪਿਕਅਪ ਜੇ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਟਿਪ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰਨਾ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਜਾਇਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟਿਪ ਹੈ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਦੇਣ ਤੋਂ ਗੁਰੇਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਜਾਂ 5% ਤੱਕ ਸਹਿਮਤੀ ਜਤਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਪਰ 15% ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਟਿਪ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਆਮ रेस्टोरेंट्स ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ है।
इसी के साथ हमें दीजिएगा इजाजत। खबरां दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम से until next time, goodbye and be safe.